頑張れ。あとたったの3分で。なあ、ジョー。
Should I even try to do a review of anime at some point on this show? Because a lot of anime ends depressing ways. Including Ashito no Jo.
Spitting nothing but facts. Fans screaming I'm back. Legendary I'm that. Cooking up a new batch.
Greetings, my fellow Marauders out there, and welcome back to Marauders Reviews. The 90s was a weird time to actually release anything of substance. And it kind of hurt its own potential for a lot of things of the adaptation genre. I mean, sure, we had stuff that was interesting, like when people made the Spawn film, or when people saw the R.L. Stine's Goosebumps TV series. But then we also have stuff that was a little ahead of its time that never got the limelight that it deserved. It was basically a prequel sort of fad that Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, and many other YA books ended up getting that made people crave for more action. And I'm referring to the young adult series of Animorphs.
Now I'm an Animorph.
Animorphs, basically one of the most disturbing novels if you just try to look at it from a another kind of perspective. It's basically a long-standing series of novels from its main series of 50-plus books, not to mention the spin-off books that I'm not going to go into, about kids of unspecified ages or even what their full-blown last names are because they try to act like guerrilla force agents that didn't want to give away any information. Kind of like MIB, but with only all their first name instead of one letter. But that's not where I'm going to go into things about where the book is standing. We are instead going to touch on the TV adaptation that it had on Nickelodeon during, of course, the early 2000s. Yeah, that was a weird time for TV. So, it didn't do well audience-wise, which is why it got canceled after its second season. But a lot of people praised it for a lot of different reasons that I'll go into for a later date. But why was it not as well received as stuff of later generations of the Harry Potters or the Percy Jacksons or the Hunger Games? Well, let's dive into the first two episodes of its premiere for My Name is Jake, Parts 1 and Part 2. Our adventure begins with a flash forward into several hours before we get into the Part 2 segment. Kind of like how we're skipping ahead in several months of production to bring this review. To then flashback to the night of the incident that kicked off the entire event of the series as a whole, where we're introduced to the characters of Jake and Marco and Tobias at this computer cafe as they play goddamn Beast Wars.
That's so very, very sad.
In any case, though, we have to just introduce the two ladies of the entire franchise of Rachel and Cassie later on in the whole thing, as we then have to kick off the plot by having the most adorable dog in the world do one of the strangest things after the strangest events happens at this gaming computer cafe thing. What was this place, Nickelodeon?
That's not fair. You just got blown away.
Yeah, after basically a power surge goes off and everything else, Homer the dog, the adorable golden retriever that wasn't part of Air Bud, decides to run out of the cafe, and then we have our opening credits.
You can't talk and then do a slow clap.
Anywho, we have Jake, Marco, Cassie, and Rachel chasing after Homer. Tobias is already long gone at this point in the episode, and they end up at this big old power plant, probably from running several miles if we're going to take into account the light fixture in this scene, to then go into the night fixture of this scene.
Homer. Come on, boy.
To then search for Homer the dog throughout this entire power plant. Not until morning, like realistically, because god dang, the sun isn't even out yet, bruh. And they find Tobias has Homer.
He seems okay now.
Yes, we found the dog. Episode over? No. We then have to introduce a certain little itty bitty tiny detail about this franchise that really makes it go from just a slice of life TV series like Living Single or Full House or Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and turns into a YA novel because how to describe this scene other than
I hate awkward silences.
Anywho, yeah, we have aliens in this bitch where they're just trying to stake out this alien spacecraft because of course you do. And then when they're just trying to stake out what's really in the pod, out comes a space centaur! Yeah, space centaur. With a pig-nosed mouth that looks like vagina lips. Could you tell this was a book for either kids or young adults? Anywho, this centaur thing from space is named Alfangor. He is dying. That's not even a spoiler. He's literally dying when he's crash landing. So Cassie, in her infinite wisdom after Rachel with her inspirational leadership, is like, we gotta go help him.
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
But the kids, well, except for Marco, because Marco's the straight man of the whole entire series up until a certain point, decides to run over and try and help him, but he's automatically just trying to give his final death speech that basically sums up as, hi, I'm part of this war. There are some slugs. You guys want to have magical powers that make no sense? Touch my cube. And basically after they touch the cube, and he says the most cryptic thing in the world.
This gift is for you too, Tobias.
How do you know my name?
I'll touch on this at a later date if I remember. After they touch the cube, he then goes over what their new powers are that really sums up the entire franchise.
You need only to touch a creature to acquire its DNA pattern and change your form.
You mean we can change into animals?
However, there is one stipulation with this power.
When you change, you must return to your human form within 2 Earth hours. You will be trapped within an animal form forever.
You gotta love how to nerf an OP power like this. So, after they touch the cube and everything, in comes another spaceship!
What's happening?
But for right now, we're just gonna ignore this scene, as we have to introduce the first villain of the franchise, Visser 3.
Prince Alfangor, what an honor it is to be in the presence of a legend.
Visser 3.
Yes, I have taken one of your Andalite bodies as my host.
Yeah, Visser 3 may be one of these space centaur things at the moment, but trust me, he's actually a slug demon that comes from space. So basically, it's Boba Fett if he were to be tiny and easy to fit in your ear.
That shit is gross!
So, Alfangor is just trying to talk that mad, good, and Visser 3 isn't having it. So he turns into a giant monstrosity and decides to... Could you believe this was censored enough for TV? Anyway, after Rachel says her whole entire one line of dialogue that really cements her as being a proud and very confident and versatile warrior that we know in the franchise.
No!
Brilliant stuff there. We have an entire and unprompted and out of nowhere security team just bum rushing in out of nowhere to try and find any single person that may have been on the Andalite ship. Andalites being the space centaurs, by the way. And the kids decide to run away as fast as possible and then have to fight these dinosaur things. I don't know. And Jake decides to showcase his brilliance as a leader.
Come on, let's go!
Truly the stuff of legends. To try and distract this dinosaur thing, to lead him away from his friends so that they could escape, and gets cut in the process to hide in a tube. General Patton would salute you, dude. And so, while hiding in this tube, he thinks it's all over when he hears footsteps when suddenly, shock of all shocks,
Homer! Homer, come here. Come on, Homer.
Homer is best dog. And so, with him and his dog just stuck in this tube with no real way out, Jake is just cuddling his dog, but then remembers he has the power to morph.
What the fuck? What? What the f was that? What are you talking about?
Oh, you just gotta love scenes where bones shift and twist to form you into a whole nother species. Just hits you right here. Not in the heart, like right where your collarbone is. Like it hurts like right here. So, now that he's his dog and Jake, in dog form, decide to run away from the entire power plant, where the people are just standing around saying they're gonna chase after him. Like, literally, you have Visser 3 saying to chase after them.
Get those dogs, you fool! They might be Andalites!
And nobody chases after the dogs. Why? No. Anyway, we then cut to the next morning, before we get to the beginning of how the episode started off. Trust me, there's a lot going on. Where they're discussing stuff at the lunch table, and Rachel flags down her future boyfriend, and people are wondering what happened to Jake.
I thought that thing got him.
It didn't.
And then we just kind of end off the episode with them trying to recap what they're going to be doing next, how they're going to get the disc back that we kind of skipped over in this part. And part 1 ends with them just saying that they're now alone in the war that's coming up, that they've just been drafted into without warning.
This is starting to sound like a bad comic book plot.
That is My Name is Jake Part 1 in its entirety, and wow. I have a lot to say, but we're going to wait off on everything I need to say for Part 2.